Exceptional Radio. Exceptional Randos show is produced live in Sunroom Studios Base Capsule and in partnership with KLST 103.5, RadioCallisti.org. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening. Well, that was random. Exceptional Radio. Hey, good afternoon. It's the 4th of April. It's Zombie Jesus Day, apparently. He has risen, and he's come to remind us that, you know, it's the 4th of April.
Evil will never be as good as him. That's what he's reminding us. No matter what we do, we'll never be as good as him. So is it even worth trying?
I mean, he's gonna like absorb all of our sins, right? I might be misinterpreting that.
Like a spirit bomb.
Yeah, he's
like absorbing sins like a spirit bomb, and then he's gonna throw them at Satan.
Which apparently you can get to via really long pole. I mean, it's like a fireman pole or a stripper pole. It's some kind of extremely long pole, but you can get there via
that
the
part. Say.
You have the fifth element. I think the fifth element might be like a Jesus story as well. The resurrection of the fifth element.
The fifth element.
I think of like the fifth element being a really complex like Ultimate Warrior narrative. I mean, obviously like way beyond a wrestling mat, but you know that it's this like a creature that somehow has the ability to tap into all that is in existence and channel that to defeat the evil. And is that a Jesus story?
I don't know.
Because they kill his ass.
Yeah, but it's kind of like a spirit bomb also.
That's true.
Goku is... If Goku and Jesus fought, who would win? Who would get the biggest spirit bomb?
Because they both keep coming back to life.
Would the sins outweigh the spirits? Yeah, because Goku's art transcended once before too. So, or no, he's transcended at least twice because he died the first time sacrificing himself for Earth's sins. Well, for Earth's existence, not their sins.
Yeah, the dynamic of the Dragon Ball universe is a little different.
Slightly, but say Goku is more prolific than Jesus in his willingness to sacrifice himself.
Man,
because he does it for multiverse.
Yep.
But he wins in that one. In that, I think it's like.
Well, no. At the end of Dragon Ball Super, he and Frieza sacrifice themselves to take Jiren out, and then Android 17 is the one that makes the deciding wish that saves all of existence.
That's right.
And I'm glad you brought up Dragon Ball because I had just finished watching all of the Super. I powered through it the other day when I was working on some homework, but that last like 40 episodes, because they stretch out a minute into 20 minutes per episode. That was some of the most intense. I'm sorry.
They don't do that as much in Super. It's more 1-to-1. Like they do that in
Well, no. At the tournament, at the last 40 episodes during the Xeno multi-universe tournament, it's like every episode they're like 38 minutes, 37 minutes remain.
But I don't think they follow like Earth time.
Oh no,
I'm following Earth time because it's fucking what's the dude the god of that universe, because he like splits himself at one point, like I don't because what's it? It's like the one that's above Beerus.
Oh yeah, there's the Grand Zeno. And at one point, because they have a fractured timeline because the future Trunks has
Yeah.
to come back and get help, and they bring the Xeno from that universe back to hang out with the prime timeline Zeno, and so they can.
Well, I don't think they follow Earth minutes there.
No, they've got their own thing going.
Yeah. Which is where, well, because the whole reason I say it like that is in Z, they do out time like on the Frieza fight. It's like one of the longest anime fights in history. It's like 3 hours long, but it's actually only supposed to represent like 5 minutes or something.
Yeah.
Or like 10. I don't know exactly the time, but the time disparity on Z is way different, and they improve that on Super in that like the fights between people only usually last like within an episode, except in the last few they stretch out a couple of them.
So I actually have a theory about this, and it comes down to their power levels, and as their power levels increase, so does their mass and their gravity, because that's the only way they could really deliver that kind of power. From what I've observed, and so as their mass increases and their effect on gravity increases, so does their effect on the passage of time, which is also the reason that we can see all their directed energy blasts and things like that, because their mass is holding that stuff back long enough for us to see it.
And further, like Goku wasn't able to teleport until like much later in the evolution, so the time where he's not teleporting is just him moving through space, whereas him teleporting is instant transmission.
Yeah.
And that's a huge difference, where like when people are, because then Hit was able to like reverse time by 3 seconds, right?
He like somehow skipped time and saved it up and was able to like use it later.
Yeah.
That's a really crazy machine of God moment right there.
Yeah. But then Goku was able to overcome it. So there's all these things, where they're creating mechanics in their universe that don't follow ours at all, like not even remotely as far as time flow. Because then when Goku's like running back from the afterlife and going, he's running 10,000 miles, which is more epic than Odysseus. He's like experiencing time different there too, because that's also why he trains with the Grand Kai. Like, they definitely establish different speeds of time in different planes there, which is cool, and that's kind of,
Well, I think if we're dealing with like interdimensional, multi-universe beings, then a lot of the things that we thought are true about multiverse physics may not actually be correct, and it's still a brave frontier.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody should ever assume like science fiction multiverse stuff is even remotely near what's happening in real life, because then you look at shit like Star Trek, and it's like the fact that they have multiple alien species all following Earth time on a ship with no lights or with no sun is fucking dumb. There's just certain things in Western sci-fi when you look at it, like, oh, this is dumb. They just did this because they got lazy here.
Well, the universal translator. I mean,
yeah, like shit like that where.
And everyone hears English, of course, because it's translating it to the listener. Somehow they've managed to give us the universal translator too.
It's very human centric.
Oh yeah. That's the story of the Federation in a nutshell. We come in peace.
Human centricity.
Yeah. We come in peace. What kind of resources do you have that we can use? We'll bring you trinkets and blankets.
I don't care what anybody says. They're colonials as fuck too.
How can we mediate your conflicts to our benefit?
fucking Sector 31 acting like they weren't part of the Federation.
Oh man.
Oh, we don't know that they're rogue. Bullshit. Bullshit, they're rogue. You know they're taking money from you. Where they get their funds from?
If we're not even supposed to have money by now, you know you're taking it.
Right. Yeah. And that was it. Federation wasn't supposed to have money or whatever, but they always ended up using it and using it to trade with people. And it's like, man, they never actually held up their own ideals. Yeah, they would go into debt with Ferengi consistently and end up having to like give Ferengi shit because they didn't have their own money and were like, oh yeah, we got universal harmony and everything, but hey, can we get a loan?
Well, in the Star Trek game,
Grand Nagus.
yeah. In the Star Trek game, you know, you can, as a member of the Federation, you can gamble and earn gold press latinum, or you can do jobs for the Ferengi and get gold press latinum, or you can just like replicate a bunch of provisions and devices and trade that with people.
Gambling games or those poker games on the Enterprise were fucking so stupid because they weren't even betting anything. They were just playing with chips to look cool. And then you realize like this is like no stakes poker. This is might as well be like one of those online fucking demos where you're just learning how to play. There's nothing at stake anytime.
They address
Dabo.
Yeah. Well, that's an actual gambling game. But in Lower Decks, they address the poker game. There's one episode where they go in there and every time it's somebody's turn, they fold. And then Beckett Mariner is like, she's like, I'm all in. And then has like a pair or something. He's like, I got everything. And then they all chastise her for winning. He's like, you're not supposed to win.
I feel like Worf folded every game. It was like the running joke. Him, and then who else? There was somebody else who would always fold, but between Riker and Data, trying to figure out if Data could ever bluff, which he finally figured out how, but it's like, oh, what's bluffing if there's nothing at stake? This is dumb.
Yeah. Well, then they create that subordinate to Guinan who plays poker with all the Lower Decks crewmen, and after he's done taking all their money, he goes and hangs out with the bridge officers and starts taking their money. Except there's no money; it's just chips because they're on the Enterprise, and everything is provided for them by the Federation. Yeah, gambling in space. That just seems like a poor decision.
Right.
It's like
terrible decision. What are you going to gamble away your oxygen reserves or your fucking dilithium? Fucking let's we need some real high stakes. Let's put some dilithium on the line.
On Voyager, though, they would gamble with their replicator rationing and other actual perishable items.
That was stupid. That's fucking stupid. In space. You're in space. You're in motherfucking space. You're gambling your goddamn rations? You ain't got shit better. You got a goddamn holodeck, and you got holodeck rations that you're probably fucking gambling too, but instead of like going and doing some shit, I'm gonna gamble my fucking food away in the middle of goddamn nowhere. There's so much dependence upon poor decisions in Western fiction and sci-fi. It's like, oh, what's the worst possible decision you can make? Gamble away your food rations? Let's do that. And then we'll build a whole episode about how this person's going to try to earn back food in the middle of fucking space.
No, I think it was because Paris wanted to make some kind of trinket for
Lana?
No, it was the other Neelix's what's her name? Kess. Yeah, he was making her like some trinket, and he ended like, he gambled away or traded some of his rations to buy to replicate some trinket.
BT Dubs, hashtag Me Too with Paris character. Like, how many Starfleet characters were just like constantly trying to fuck everyone around them? And it's like, Jesus Christ, how are you gonna like navigate through the stars with this dude who's constantly making like jokes about his junk, trying to fuck every female officer of every fucking race that comes through the ship? And it's like, yeah, this is why we shouldn't fucking work with the Maquis.
Well, Kirk was pansexual and Riker is pansexual. I mean, there's like a weird tradition of people in the command chain getting freaky with other species from different planets, different sectors of space.
That's not okay.
Yeah, it's kind of fucked up.
It's very fucked up. And that's like one of those things where you like look back at Karate Kid and you're like, oh shit, there's like a near rape scene in this film. And it's like, there's all this shit where it was so common. It's like, oh, PG-13 movie, near rape scene. Fucking this captain of a starship tries to fuck everything. And that's just how it is. We're just okay with this dude leading a starship trying to fuck everything. That's okay. Because this is America. Let's normalize that shit. And that's where I'm like, man, it's so weird looking back on older stuff to see how far we've come ethically.
And then to realize that it's really not that far yet.
We're way better than that. We're 100% better than those people. And that's okay. It's okay to say that. Just because they're our grandparents and shit like that. Yeah, guess what? Our grandparents did some fucking stupid, dumb shit. And we don't do that shit anymore because we're smarter than them and we're ethical than them. We don't have Jim Crow laws in the same. We have them trying to bring that shit back. You look at who those people in Georgia trying to bring back Jim Crow. It's not us. Yeah. It's not somebody our age. It's our fucking grandparents' age people. Like, obviously not like Black and Jewish and Asian grandparents doing. It's not our grandparents doing that. It's other people's grandparents. But again, it's like the grandkids. They're not strong enough to push back against it, and then that's where you get these people who are like okay with their racist ass grandparents and okay with their like molesty ass grandparents because they're just not strong enough to do anything about it. And that's kind of like on, this is where it's on people like us to call out like, hey, yeah, I can still enjoy Star Trek, but call out the rapiness of the fucking Star Trek universe. It's a super rapey universe. Like, if we're gonna be real, and then on top of that, they have a huge problem representing trans and gay people and making them seem like predators and evil people. Like, anytime somebody's like remotely close to gay in like the Next Generation or Voyager or Deep Space Nine, they're going to be doing some weird fucked up shit for the sake of the storyline, and that's going to be like representative of other sexuality in those
so there's a character in the early days of TNG. He was a command chain officer, and he wore a red version of Troy's miniskirt outfit. Yeah. And that character was very quickly changed to wear the standard red uniform that everyone else did, because apparently some executives didn't feel comfortable with that kind of expression yet.
Yeah, they were trying to make that skirt unisex at first.
Yeah, like a pair of short shorts.
Yeah,
and we all wore Umbros when we were fucking kids.
No. No. I never did. And that's like, it's one of those things where like soccer would make you wear those.
Yeah, that shit was not comfortable.
Nope. I'm wearing gym shorts. Not doing it. That shit is not comfortable. It's like, it's like weird when you run. It feels like underwear.
But not. Nope.
not
Yeah,
doing it.
you know what's funny is I didn't discover gym shorts until I was like 33. I didn't realize how comfortable they are. I'd gone decades of my life not knowing that there was a pair of shorts that you could walk around in that were actually comfortable, that didn't require like, well, that didn't feel like a short pair of pants. It's actually kind of life changing.
Oh yeah, very much so. And that's where there's like all these times I remember in my life where they try to make me do one thing and I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. It's so funny that I've just always been adamantly against doing things to my person that I don't want to. Like if they're like, oh, you have to wear this socks, I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. You're not gonna make me wear a pair of certain socks. Like in elementary school, because I went to a private school, they tried to say, oh, you have to wear black socks. I wore white socks like the entire fucking time because I just refused. You know what I mean? It's like, and they give me a detention for it if they noticed it. And it's like, well, I'm just gonna get another detention. So I ended up getting a bunch of detentions for stupid shit like wearing white socks. It's like, you know, that's how you end up making people desensitized to detention when you give them a bunch for stupid shit like that. So then I started getting detentions for other shit like drawing dicks on lockers because I'm like, oh, if I'm gonna get detentions for wearing different socks, then I'll actually do bad shit. And it was like one of these things where the school eventually, like when schools would see black kids, they'd be like, oh, this person's doing something horrible, so I'm gonna give them a detention. And then if a white kid did the same shit, they'd get like explained why not to do it. So I saw this shit as a kid. So I'm just like, oh, you're gonna fucking do whatever and make it seem like I'm horrible anyway. So I actually just started fucking with the teachers and started like doing crazy shit. But I was smart enough that I wouldn't get caught. So like it's one of these things where it's like you start fucking with somebody who's smarter than the teachers, well then they're gonna start fucking with the teachers back. So I would do shit like I like smoked a cigarette in class one time and got away with it because I'm like, you guys are fucking stupid and you're trying to make me like a criminal or some shit. So I was like 100% antagonizing teachers like that, like doing shit like that, like rolling joints in class, like putting up my binder and rolling a joint and like so the teacher can't see. And it's shit like that where I'm like, you know, looking back on it, that's 100% their fault. That's 100% their fault. And it's one of those things where the teachers that like didn't antagonize me, I didn't antagonize them, and we're still cool to this day. But like the ones that antagonized me, oh, you best believe I was gaslighting the fuck out of them. Like this one teacher, we would leave half-eaten food on his desk because he was like fat, and it's one of these things where fuck that dude. I don't give a fuck about him because he was like fucking with little kids in the sense of trying to mess with their confidence. So fuck that dude. I'll talk shit about him all day. Anyway, we would like leave half-eaten food on his desk to make him think he had like eaten something and forgotten about it. And it was like we would arrange it so that it was like a bagel with like a single bite taken out of it, like, but on the corner of his desk. So it wouldn't be like, we wouldn't be making messes. It would be like a fucking yogurt with a spoon in it that was like half eaten, but just sitting on the corner of his desk. Or like,
How long is it going to be there before he notices, kind of thing, right?
well, he got pissed off and like one day he flipped out about it, and it's like he started yelling at the class because he didn't know who was doing it, because it wasn't just me, it was like a group of people at this point because he was fucking with all the black kids. So we got together, we would like do shit like this to people because it's like, you know, we're smart little black kids, we're not just like dumb kids. So it's like, you're gonna fuck with us and be racist, like we're gonna do some crazy shit back. Like, dude, this one lady, we would switch seats when she would turn her back. That one day too, and it was like one of these things where it's like you know, again, out of context, it's like, oh, you're bad kids. Like, nah, man, these are grown adults fucking with children's confidence, being racist. They had no business being around kids. So yeah, we're fucking with them back. Like, so there's all this shit where I look back on it, and like anytime I actually got in trouble and I'm thinking about it, I'm like, oh, that's just because this teacher like was fucking with me. So I started fucking with them back and eventually probably got caught doing something, you know, and it's like, for all of the things I ever got caught doing, there's like 10 things that I didn't get caught doing that weren't like malicious in nature, in the sense of, oh, I'm not just going out like gaslighting this teacher for no reason. No, I'm gaslighting this teacher because he's fucking with black kids. Like, and that's where, again, the school I went to, yeah, I definitely, knowing everything that played out the way it did, I definitely made the right choices in targets. Like, yeah, that school, Park Tudor, was a fucked up school, and they did all this shit to make it look great on the front. And this is where you see all these like rich people and all the facades they put up. And when you see that shit every day and like what's behind the facades, that's where I'm like, oh my God, all these people are just like using their wealth to masquerade their emptiness. They're all super empty people. Like almost 100% of them are empty. Not even necessarily by their own fault. Like a lot of times, like, man, you'd see kids that had super rich parents and their parents would never be around, and these kids would just be like, it's like beyond latchkey kid when you have like somebody that can drive you around and you have like a fucking, you know, blank check. You have nobody watching you. You can get drugs, you can get alcohol, you can get cigarettes, you can get fucking prostitutes, you can get anything you want, but you have no fucking parent around. So you see these kids growing up empty as fuck, trying to fill that void where their parents gone, with just like buying shit to replace it. And it's like, oh my God, like I've never, ever, ever
I think they call that person a concierge.
Right. Yeah. A lot of, bro, I don't know if you realize how many kids have like basically concierges. Like, like at Park Tudor alone, like that was a normal thing. But I mean, it's like, you know, some of them had live-in nannies, and like the nannies had their own rooms, they had their own cars. Some of them had their own like houses on the properties. So that's what I'm saying. It's like that level where these parents aren't raising their own kids. They're buying other people to raise their kids for them. And the kids are growing up resenting them for that. And then you see like, there's no amount of money that can buy you a fucking parent. Like none of that money that the parents give their kid buys them a relationship, and they grow up fucking empty and vapid, and like they end up being these disgusting people because they never learned how to develop proper relationships, because the person who brought them into this world just treated them like a fucking object.
I mean, can anyone really have a relationship with an ATM machine? Because that's kind of what you described as
pretty much
the delinquent, vacant, or negligent parent. They're essentially just an ATM at that point. If there's no effort on either side to foster a relationship.
That's exactly what it ends up being. Because I'm looking at it like, if you're 16 and you're driving a Porsche or a Mercedes or a Lexus, which most of these kids drove something of that caliber. So you can't go to Park Tudor and drive there in like a Ford Escort without somebody making fun of you. So nobody did that. Like nobody's learning that lesson of.
And they wouldn't have been old enough to do it ironically.
No, not at all. Not at all. And it's like, okay, for example, I remember somebody drove an old Volkswagen. It was like some sort of convertible. It looks old, it looks crappy, but it was like still a $40,000 car because it was this fucking vintage Volkswagen convertible that didn't have a radio in it. And this dude was like, 16 driving this $40,000 car, trying to look ironically poor, but it was still a $40,000 car. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. These same kids would go to like Goodwill and shop at Goodwill Ironically, that's the type of shit rich kids did. Is like, oh, it's cool to buy vintage clothes, and look at me, I look like I'm a poor person. But
Isn't that's they made fun of that in Zoolander? They called that style derelict. The look of like indigent people and poor people and homeless people.
yep, and that's like exactly what rich kids do. Or I mean, I don't know if they do it now, but that's what they were doing then. So I'm sure they're still doing the same shit.
I mean, certain fashion brands, they have like hoodies with lots and lots of holes in them or tears, or they still, after all these years, have the jeans with the holes in them, or they have the shirts with the holes in them, and scuffs and everything like that.
Yeah,
It's manufactured like that.
They put the jeans over this like armature looking thing, and then it inflates them, and then they run over it with a belt sander a couple times in a few areas, and that's how they can keep them somewhat unique, because no two passes of the belt sander are going to be the same.
Then what? How many hundreds of % markup on that?
Well, it completely pays for the belt sander and all the sanding belts and the electricity for the sander, and it pays the salary for that guy who has to do that shit all day long.
Yeah,
And
but that person's salary isn't that much.
that's true. And it probably isn't going to cover their long-term healthcare requirements once they develop arthritis from holding on to a vibrating machine for 8 hours a day.
Because those companies will just fire them and replace them.
Yeah.
Once they can't do their jobs.
And that's like, that's should be the foundation for opposition to any kind of product that's manufactured in a kind of a sweatshop condition, or under any kind of condition where they don't actually value or take care of their laborers. But people still buy Nikes.
People still use Amazon.
People still use Amazon. Man, and everyone was so afraid of Walmart undermining and destroying the local business. Fuck, Walmart's trying to keep up with Amazon.
Well, and the issue is too, how many of those local businesses deserve to be saved?
Well, that's a good question.
How many of those local businesses operate ethically, pay their workers fairly, don't exploit people, don't cut corners with their product quality? How many of those, like, the idea of just saving a local place or a small mom and pop store just because it's mom and pops allows those people to then do that exploitative shit and get away with, we're just a mom and pop shop, we don't have the same kind of capital. Well, just because you don't have that capital doesn't give you an excuse to fucking exploit people too. And that's where I'm like, how many, I've worked at a lot of small places that don't deserve to be saved.
Yeah.
I'm not saying big businesses are the better way to go. It's a matter of like,
no, it's a case-by-case evaluatory process. There are benefits to economies of scale, but only if it's done ethically. And then there might be some highly personalized service, level of service or quality of service that you get with a small company or a mom and pop shop. But there's no guarantee that they're an ethical company just because they're small. I think that's like that's the impasse that I think a lot of people are running into, is big bad, small good. That's like total caveman thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not trying to disparage cavemen, because they were probably reasonably intelligent too, probably as intelligent as we are now. They just didn't have, entire indoctrination systems aimed at teaching people languages and technology. So,
or using technology as a symbol for supremacy as well.
Yeah, even that, yeah. So it looks like some Mustang Mach-E owners are getting threats in California from Tesla fans.
I'm not surprised, but I'm forever baffled at the notion of people making death threats
Because of the car they bought.
I mean, just that that death threat period, because I'm like, what on earth would possess someone to threaten someone's life? Because then I don't know if you saw the other link I sent.
I read that John Walker, the actor Wyatt Russell, was receiving death threats.
Yeah, people are threatening Kurt Russell's son to die because he played a character. And that's where I'm like, okay, let me be very, very clear. When people start to say shit is like mental illness without actually having had a direct assessment, is very offensive, and it's some shit that it crosses a line where nobody needs to be armchair psychologist assessing people. Now, the issue is when we see people threatening someone's life for driving a car or acting, what the fuck do we call that shit? You know what I mean? It's like, this is the most absurd human being, and we all have to coexist with them, because then we can't act like this person is just innocuous, because we got these fucking assholes that'll go into a goddamn grocery store and start shooting up a place because you shop at the grocery store they don't like, or whatever it is now in this fucking shithole ass country. So that's what I'm saying.
Well, people getting shot for asking somebody to wear a mask.
Right. Yeah. No, this is this shithole country we have devolved. Well, I don't know if it ever evolved. We've come to find out that the country we live in is such a shithole that if you like a certain type of car and you drive a certain type of car, or if you act in the wrong role, someone will threaten your life because they feel so entitled to do so. And this is where this comes back to me to gun culture, a white supremacist institutional dehumanization of people's bodies. And in that, it's not mental illness, because it repeatedly comes up in different contexts where people feel entitled to do this shit. We cannot assume that all of these people are mentally ill. It's damn near impossible for that to be the case. So let's remove mental illness from this conversation when we're discussing people who are willing to threaten someone's life over a fucking acting role. These are subhumans now. We're declassifying, or these people are no longer able to qualify as humans, in that a human who is mentally ill would not do these things in most mental illnesses. So these are things that are outside the scope of most mental illnesses. Like, just if somebody's like ADHD or bipolar or schizophrenic, like, those things aren't even necessarily going to prompt that person to try to kill somebody because of the car they drive.
No, that person is most likely going to be more interested in buying cars themselves, or buying things, or satisfying a particular,
or thinking they're this or the Messiah or something.
Right. Or being, paranoid about the reason why somebody purchased something, and then maybe being even too frightened to send a message, and, writing furiously in a journal about how it affects them.
So the federal tax credit for electric vehicles has been extended into 2021, and it ranges from, there are IRS qualified vehicles that range in rebate or tax credit from $4,500 for a Kia Niro on up to $7,500 for an Audi e-tron, or a Mustang Mach-E, or a Niro EV, or a hey, you know what's not on this list is a Tesla. Weird. I'm sure it's on the list. I'm just not seeing it in the whole list. But that tax credit, Is that tax credit essentially funded by the taxpayer? Or is this some kind of weird math where like, oh, we'll just forget it because it's part of this incentive program? Or is that actually like coming out of taxpayer money pool?
Yeah, it comes out of taxpayer money pool, in that if you get a tax credit, then you are getting like a reduction in your costs of taxes, meaning that inevitably, if something is going to be paid, it will be paid for from somewhere else. So it's like either it doesn't get paid or it gets paid from somewhere else, and that's where.
Okay, so this is something that occurs with a business, a for-profit company. So they're getting paid. They're going to get their $7,500. Tesla's going to get its $7,500, and that money is not being paid by the person who's purchasing the car because whatever reason. But then that $7,500 has to be accounted for somewhere, and so if it's accounted for by taxes, then everybody is essentially financing the purchase of a Tesla.
Everybody, they'll like do shit like, for example, attach it to a gas tax or something, so it's only people buying gas or something like that.
That's even better. So the even smaller portion of the population that purchase gasoline for their gasoline vehicles, their internal combustion engine vehicles, or even diesel engine vehicles, they are financing the purchase of electric vehicles that have limited infrastructure and batteries that'll fail.
And this is like the weirdness of the way our dumbass whole country government tries to solve things, is they just take taxes and put them in one place to try to incentivize those people to not do that thing, when them putting the taxes in that is not explicit enough for those people to change their behavior. So when we're buying gasoline, every gallon is going to be like 60 to 70 cents more because of all the taxes put on top of it that we don't realize we're paying, like the excise tax and the highway tax or whatever. There's taxes tacked on top of every gallon of gasoline that, because it's not explicit to us, we don't know we're paying them, so it's not going to affect our behavior. So ultimately, you have people trying to social engineer that are doing this because they're good at white supremacist social engineering, so they believe themselves to be good enough at other types of social engineering that then they try to modify people's behaviors through taxes, and ultimately it just ends up being a way to preserve their own institution. So it's, you know.
Is there an app or a way to reference through a QR code all the taxes that are being put onto somebody's gas when they're filling up at the pump?
I mean, I'm sure somebody's built an app, but that was profitable, so.
I mean, how many? I admit I don't know all of the ways that we're being taxed for gasoline. I'm sure that there's some like corporate accountant out there who understands gasoline taxation rules really well, or an attorney maybe who understands it, but.
And they fly private. Everywhere.
So in Indiana, gasoline tax is 30 cents per gallon. And I think that's the state tax. So then there's a federal tax of 18 cents per gallon. So then that looks like a total of 54 cents per gallon. Because then
26.54 cents per gallon.
Check it. Pennsylvania is 77 cents per gallon.
What? Yeah, Massachusetts is 26.54 cents per gallon.
And it shows in the quality of the roads in Massachusetts.
Massachusetts. Dude, so many potholes out here.
Yeah, this is the shit though that people don't realize is happening around them because they're not educated about the tax system, and it's intentionally made to seem like some super complex thing that then people who are also made to feel like they're not good at math intentionally actively avoid engaging with the tax system. So they don't understand the complexities, pay someone else to do it, and never think about it.
Hear, hear.
It's too funny to me how the system of making obedient citizens but not smart citizens results in what we have today.
What? Giving someone a death threat for the kind of car that they bought?
But that too, everything. All of that. That's an obedient citizen but not a smart citizen.
Well, that means the indoctrination process was successful.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
There should be a death threat tax. Every time you say something stupid and threaten someone's life for something stupid like that, you get taxed.
Technically, the tax is supposed to be jail or prison time, but because our government actually wants white supremacists to be allowed to do that type of shit, they just, we can't do anything about it. This guy's some guy on the internet. We can't figure out who he is. So
yeah, right.
When Twitter or Facebook try to moderate people's speech, people say that their First Amendment rights are being violated, failing to recognize the breadth of or the reach of the Constitution in terms of private businesses being able to set their own standards.
Yeah, but the didn't that regulation get modified or repealed so that way the private corporations could moderate?
Well, I was talking about the blowback from the platform users. Like people on Twitter were complaining, people on Facebook started complaining when both platforms tried to moderate people's language. And on Facebook, they would just create a new account because that only takes a few minutes. Like anytime somebody gets put in Facebook jail, I get a friend request. It's like they tried to keep me out, but they can't do it. It's like, man, I don't like this place that much that I just start creating new accounts after getting like put in Facebook jail. Go do something else because I've got real hobbies.
Especially after every user's information got leaked.
Oh man. Yeah, 536 million accounts is the last number that I read was the tally. They've got phone numbers, addresses, email accounts, all sorts of metrics about interests and advertising information and all that stuff.
So much for the digital fingerprint.
Man, if this isn't like a big wake-up call to the user base of Facebook, then
but they're obedient.
Well, no, the only conclusion that I can draw there is that they don't care and they don't realize the importance of securing their information, of their digital information.
Or it's just like people who go out and have unprotected sex everywhere. They just don't care, or they don't think it can happen to them. So they hear about all these people getting their info leaked, just like they hear about, or they get educated about people getting a bunch of STDs and STIs from unsafe practices. And then they think, oh, it's not going to happen to me. And then once it happens to them, they don't care because they say, oh, it already happened. So, I don't have to do anything about it anymore. There's nothing to do. Supposed to try and be more responsible in the future.
They're not going to be more responsible with their information. They don't even know how much information they have on the internet. That's the problem. Like I've walked with people. I've actually made tutorials on how to extract personal data from Facebook, and there's a step-by-step process. And it's actually detailed on the screen in front of people, but for whatever reason, it's difficult to find. I found it by Googling how do I retrieve my data from Facebook, and that's how I found out how. But it's not obvious for some people. And I think a lot of it comes down to the interface they're using. I refuse to use the internet on a phone if I can help it. If there's a computer, I prefer that. But on a phone, it's actually very difficult to find some portions of the internet, and that's actually kind of scary. Like to think that, the browser, the main portal that people use to gain access to information, is now limited in a way that very few people will notice because they might not realize there's something else out there that can do the same thing without these barriers.
That's why I always switch to desktop mode.
Yeah.
Because then you don't get that limitation. So it's like, yeah, I don't think people realize that there is a difference between a mobile site and a desktop site. And the mobile site usually doesn't give you everything.
Yeah, they have different design principles behind them to make them efficient and to get people to do what they want visitors to do, which is press on this link here and go buy stuff. And I get it. We're a capitalist society that prides itself on this weird fallacy of infinite growth, infinitely sustainable growth that's not infinitely sustainable.
Well, and then I'll surf without an ad blocker on sometimes, and I forget how violating the internet is in terms of trying to constantly bombard your attention with ads. And then I'm like, I can't imagine people doing this without an ad blocker. Jesus Christ.
Well, the ads have like multiple purposes. They're not just to advertise to you, but they're to like suck away your data and information and then like share it with people, or just not even share it with people, just like link it up to other applications that then generate their own ads for you or for other people with similar interests.
I've got 5 different blocking extensions. I've got one that is just an efficient blocker, uBlock Origin, and I use kill FBCL ID to remove the Facebook click ID. And then I use a blacklist, which is, I can enter a term and it restricts those things from coming up on the page. And then I've got ad block for YouTube, which is really just for YouTube. But I'm running 5 extensions to keep my internet browsing experience from going to that place that you just described. That hell of the deep dark dungeon of the internet.
It's so interesting that the deep dark dungeon is literally what people are interacting with on a regular basis. It's just the exterior is painted very nicely and it looks friendly and it's very convenient looking and the door is unlocked. But the door doesn't lock from the inside either. The door doesn't lock from the outside. So anything can come out of the door once you start like using it.
It's so bright out here. I gotta get back in that cave. I gotta tell everyone how bright it is.
You gotta get back in the cave and start painting on the walls, warning future generations. What it'll be another 7,000 years and they're going to be cave discoveries, cave drawing discoveries of like servers painted on walls, the dangers of the importance of a firewall, the dangers of going in without an ad blocker.
Somebody's going to put a QR code on the inside of a cave and some future archaeologist is going to scan it with their computer and it's going to pull up some really nasty malware that's been floating around in the satellite cloud.
There won't be any electricity by that time.
Yeah, but satellites, man, nuclear power, sun power.
Yeah, but the satellites will be going strong, so because there won't be any light pollution, they'll be able to see all these things floating and like moving around in space around the Earth, orbiting.
So recently, there was some activity in the exploration of our moon, and they were talking about how long would it take for somebody to essentially walk around the moon, and given that the fastest that we've ever been able to get our astronauts to walk in a low gravity environment They can walk as quickly as something like 3 miles an hour. And so they calculate at top speed, it would be like, including rest, of course, because they say they can only really walk at full speed for about 4 hours a day. It would take roughly 580 days or something dumb. And I'm reading this thinking like, well, when are we going to have spacesuits that can allow for that kind of movement? And then, read a little further. It answers my question. 2040, 2050, maybe. If we still have a space program that's functioning like in those terms and it's not just some moon mining operation. And then I think to myself, it's like, well, they're only really can be on the surface of the moon for 3 or 4 weeks before they are definitely going to get cancer. How the hell are they going to make it around the moon? Like, what idiot? What kind of crazy multi-billionaire idiot is it gonna take to think that they can walk around the moon and not die?
They'll take segways with them.
Shit.
Oh man, and they're gonna come back with some weird side effects like man on the moon for 2 weeks comes back with shrunken testicles, and it's like
Man on the moon comes back after walking around it with fourth arm.
Growing a nose out of the back of his skull.
I mean, because I'm sure if your muscles atrophy, there's no way your testicles are resistant to that shit.
1/6 the gravity. The balls would turn into raisins. 1/6 the size.
Not that everything's about that, but I'm sure.
Moon walk journal day 245. Testicular diameter has decreased by 65%. I'm starting to get worried.
How are they measuring it?
Oh, the time to walk around the moon?
No, the diameter of their testicles if they're in their suits the whole time.
They're gonna have to install some kind of laser measurement system. I mean, accuracy, man, that's important. They'll do a 3D scan, 2 directions, map that shit.
Keep a toolbox on the Segway.
Oh, God. There's got to be some way to get around on a body that has significantly
Tents.
Reduced.
What about radiation deflecting tents that act like encapsulating umbrellas that you can see through from the inside to block radiation? So that when you move around, you basically have this. It's like out of the Jetsons, except
you're like a bubble astronaut, a hamster ball.
Basically, like a hamster ball.
Oh man! So apparently, in the hottest point of the day, it's like 100 degrees in the sun, like centigrade, and then at the coldest, it's like almost 300 degrees, negative 300 degrees centigrade, or 280 or something. As cold as can be, or maybe it's Fahrenheit. It's probably centigrade. But there's a significant portion of that journey that has to be made on the dark side of the moon. 3 to 3.5 miles a day at 4 hours. It's only 14 miles a day. And that means 20 hours of hanging out in your lunar tent hamster ball, not going anywhere. You're right, they're going to have to use a Segway. Maybe they'll build a giant conveyor strip like those moving walkways at airports. It'll be part of the Amazon moon mag rail delivery system.
And they'll have their mobile umbrella system. Or they could just build an encapsulated tube with a conveyor belt around the circumference of the moon.
Yeah, that's going to require multiple multi-billionaires, I think. I mean, they might as well spend their money on something, right? If they're going to amass such obscene wealth.
Oh, you mean they're not going to spend it on social services?
I mean, they haven't done that right. They haven't done that yet, and they've had plenty of opportunities. So, I mean, I don't think that that's part of their core group of interests.
No, they're not interested in that. They're interested in what would the purpose be? Just to say that you circumnavigated the moon on a conveyor belt
on foot,
assisted.
Yeah, even in the article, they talked about having to have some kind of service vehicle or support vehicle that carried their supplies, and I imagine they would also have to have like supply drops at various distances.
I mean, you have one of those Boston Dynamics dogs be their pack animal,
pulling a moon sled. Well, if it goes the way that they depict it in Space Force, they're going to have tiny off-road vehicles, like off-road badass-looking golf carts. I don't think that's going to actually work.
They should install one of those kiosks on the moon and then a kiosk on the Earth that lets you shake hands with someone on the moon.
God, that'd be like the worst job ever. You got to go to the moon, and then you got to hang out in a room and shake a robot hand with somebody that's shaking the robot hand on the Earth side of the. That just goes bad so quickly. You're gonna have to spray that hand off so much.
Yeah, with the COVID concerns.
No, I was thinking of something much worse, but
I think they brought that up in the show.
Yeah, it just gets bad. I mean, it's a really good. It's a funny idea for a TV show, but so is their inflatable moon tent. You know, that's one of those things that they talk about space habitats or moon habitats or all these things to colonize space and the moon or Mars even. What happened to all those sharp-ass pieces of rock that are flying around? I mean, doesn't that just puncture the structure and then everyone dies?
Not in the movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, that shit doesn't.
In the movies where cars explode, but balloons in space don't.
In the movies where you can hack every car in a parking garage and tell it to drive in a particular direction.
Forget the fucking rocks, like just photons, just rogue photons. This is one of the things that the astronauts reported because they don't have protection from an atmosphere. You see photons going through your body, and you'll see them in their vision.
Yeah, there was a guy. I think what was it? I think it was at IU, who was when they were first developing or installing the particle accelerator that got hit by a photon like right through his head. Apparently, it was fine, but it was a weird experience. Yeah, there's so many things about the hostility of space that just make it less and less inviting the more I learn about it. Like, I think it's fine that we send robots into space. Sure, why not? Hopefully they don't, inspire some kind of weird sentience that comes back to kill us like science fiction would, try to make us afraid of. But I don't think that we're going to be sending people anytime soon to, Enceladus or Titan or any of these places. We can't even agree on, how to distribute food.
We can't even agree on how, and we can't even agree on whether we should.
Yeah,
the free market's going to sort it out. Yeah. Basically just leaving people to die is the answer of the people who are saying that the free market is going to sort it out. Soon there will be enough people. There won't be an abundance of mouths to feed because they will have all passed away from hunger and starvation, and then that will solve our overpopulation issues.
Holy shit, I really hope people don't actually think that. That's like,
dude, that's exactly what politicians were advocating for in the beginning of the pandemic. They were basically like, people should sacrifice their lives so that way the economy can continue.
All the people who love Atlas Shrugged believe that shit.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the Atlas
Stupid fucks that are like, oh, Ayn Rand is a genius. That's what they believe. They want to reduce poor people to dehumanized means of capital exploitation, so nobody feels bad that poor people actually are human beings, and that's some Ayn Rand induced bullshit.
Yeah. I wonder how long. I wonder how many of the Ayn Rand cult ever.
Was it Anne?
Yeah, I think it's Ayn Rand. I wonder how many people of the Ayn Rand cult actually do their due diligence and read about who she actually was, and that she was on the dole the entire time. That she was complaining about people on the dole. Fucking hypocrite.
I feel like she's one of those stupid people that changes one of their letters to a Y just to be unique. Oh, parents gave me ANN. I'm gonna change it to AYN, and that's still Ann because I'm a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
Ayn Rand. Fuck out of here, Ayn Rand. It's Ayn.
Ayn.
That way. It's Ayn in this language. This is a dumb language anyway. and ANN and ANNE and all have them sound the same. This is a stupid language.
There.
Man, this is one of the stupid. This is one of the reasons I hate English. Yet again. God, I hate fucking English.
And then all of the rules, and then all of the exceptions to the rules.
It's
yeah. French. I mean, for as much as French people suck, it's such a superior language. Like, it's not the best language out there, but French is definitely a superior language to English.
So I saw this little blurb on the internet. Apparently, the Czech language doesn't have like male or female conjugation.
I think Turkish. I think Hungarian.
Yeah, and so or maybe it was Hungarian. Anyways, so the point of what I was reading is that apparently Google Translate has the hardest time with these languages, and so within one paragraph of translation, they'll bounce back and forth between he and she every other sentence.
Yeah, it's not that they have a hard time. It's that they have a cishet white male programming it who genderizes these languages, that is not a linguist. He's some coder that just wants to shortcut shit and then ends up making a non-gendered language gendered because he feels that he's entitled to do that.
Yeah.
That shit happens. It's not that Google just has a problem with it. It's just that its language centers are programmed by white supremacist people who don't think
that's Google's problem, though. I mean, that really like absolutely is Google's problem at that point, because then they have a person on their staff who's responsible for managing the translation team, and they're failing.
The same reason. Like, you walk into a grocery store, those little sensors don't pick up black people as quickly. God. The hand.
Oh, the motion sensor things.
It's all the same shit. It's all people designing for one demographic.
Yeah. I'm always kind of amused by the way they have cameras set up at the openings at the entrances and exits of grocery stores. So they got that TV, that monitor that shows you when you're walking in. So it's like, okay, you're watching, great.
Well, and the fucked up thing is, I worked security at Best Buy for a while, I don't know how they are now, but because they don't want to buy as many cameras as they need, there's always going to be dead zones where there's no coverage. And it's one of these things where if you end up in a dead zone, you're gonna probably end up having somebody start asking you, "Hey, how's it going? You know, do you need help finding anything?" But it's because they don't have enough cameras to fucking cover everywhere in the store. So then there would be shit like this guy would come in and he figured out where the dead zones were and would take what's it called hard drives and take them out of their box and fucking
Just walk off with hard drives.
and that's where I'm like, you know, you can't. And then at Best Buy, you weren't allowed to actually engage the people. So if you knew that somebody was stealing, you couldn't like physically stop them. So basically, all you could do was say, "Hey, can I check your thing?" And if they just keep walking, you can't do anything about it. So if people are stealing from your shit, you basically
You can just shame them a little bit and hope that they do the right thing, but otherwise you can't actually do anything.
But then once they're out of the store, that's a negative impact on you because Best Buy limits your capacity to respond, but also because the shit got stolen, even if you see the person walking out and you're like, "Hey, I know who did it. This is the person." And they try to like press charges and they can't press charges or whatever, or they, you know, sometimes they do. It's like, it's still on the worker. They had shrink because they got some shit stolen. So it's like, that's where it's such a thankless job. And then you don't have the capacity to do much in it. It's like, man, it was a learning experience, but I could not recommend anybody ever do that job because it's basically setting you up to fail. It's like the weirdest thing where, again, you would think, oh, they'll just get enough cameras to make sure there's no dead zone.
The whole role of a security person itself is dangerous. It creates this a role where somebody has to, you know, assume the worst about the people that are coming into a business to shop. And they have to assume that somebody is there to steal merchandise. That's like, and then next thing you know, these people don't trust anybody.
That's true. That's accurate. I mean, that's part of your job. You know, it's like you're not supposed to trust anybody. It's not your job to trust anybody.
Yeah, but I think that our society has this issue with bringing their work home with them. It's like a culture of you got to bring your work home. I mean, they call it homework.
Right.
So I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure that there are certain occupations that are associated with a higher rate of domestic abuse and spousal abuse. And I'm pretty sure those people are bringing their work home with them.
I mean, I don't know if that's the case in the sense of like, again, this is like, if somebody's willing to cross that line, it's not the work that pushed them. That's just them not having boundaries. Yeah. Like, you can't blame that. It's not to say, oh, yeah, people shouldn't have to be working like that. It's more so people who don't have boundaries just don't have boundaries. That's not some shit that...
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, assholes are assholes no matter what they do. We need a better, like, social filter within the indoctrination system to identify the assholes earlier and get them the help they need. Whatever it is, attention, extra support, whatever. Not everyone has to turn out like that, or people don't have to turn out like that. There's got to be, I mean, that's the whole nature nurture balance, right?
I mean, it's supposed to be, but this is also where...
I mean, is nature nurture even a thing anymore? Has it been completely broken by, like, the...
It's not the binary.
Yeah.
It's definitely binary. It's like, it's both.
It's like a spectrum.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
There's also the notion that, you know, this is where somebody who's born with the same genes as a serial killer isn't just automatically going to be a serial killer. And a lot of it has to do with the nurturing. So there's, you know,
Yeah, not all
much older paradigm. I forget the way they frame it now.
like
But
not all people who lack empathy end up as sociopaths, or not end up as psychopaths, but some of them are definitely sociopaths, and not all sociopaths end up killing people. One of those things, right?
yeah, it's like the Venn diagram overlaps
Yeah,
where the actors come from both sides.
yeah,
It's just a matter of the issue is like everyone's busy trying to figure out the motivation for the action instead of trying to understand what removes the barrier for preventing that action. It's like what like the notion of, oh, this person just had a bad day. Well, that doesn't remove that barrier. Like having a bad day doesn't remove that barrier. That barrier either was there or it wasn't, or at some point something made them remove that barrier. And I think it's like completely disingenuous to try to make it seem like it's something 100% that's about that person and not also about how society makes that person see other humans. Because this gets back to like, oh yeah, if you present a certain population in a dehumanized manner constantly, then it's going to make it a lot easier for people to lash out at that population
yeah.
because they're not going to see them as humans.
Apparently, the "had a bad day" excuse has been used by a lot of people who killed people.
Yeah, and which is again, it's super. Obviously, that's not a logical reason. But then when you have police officers reinforcing that narrative, then it gets to be dangerous because then people will then be like, "Oh, this cop said it's okay, so I can say it's okay now." And this is then people start using that. Like once they see cops using that as an excuse for perpetrators, then they start using that as an excuse for themselves when to perpetrate. And then it's like this vicious cycle where the cop, oh yeah, this person just had a bad day and it's on record because they posted on Facebook, I'm having a bad day right before they did it.
Yeah, that the guy who shot up the AMPs, apparently police were sympathizing with him, saying he just had a
Yeah.
bad day.
It's like the Chris Hansen dude who would have the fucking letter in the car beforehand. Oh, I was just going in to see, what if this person needed help, and I was going to give them guidance through Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior. Meanwhile, they got like zip ties and ropes and shit. So it's like, yeah, if you show a person a get out of jail free card, they're gonna put that get out of jail free card next to their ropes and zip ties.
Yeah.
And pretend that it was just, oh, this was just a joke. This was a goof. I wasn't going to do anything bad. Oh, I was just having a bad day. I can go back out into normal society. I promise I won't have any more bad days. And that's where I'm like, come on, man, fool me once. You're never going to fool me on that shit. But fool the justice system. Come on, we need to figure some shit out.
That's some just us system in full effect. I'm having a bad day.
Yeah.
There's no excuse. That's just not an excuse. That's a bad trope at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a snowman has a meltdown. We don't think it had a bad day. We think that it's getting warm out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's. I mean, what day is it? It's Sunday. I'm sure somebody's having a bad day, but to me, it's Sunday. It's not a bad day today. I'm sorry that they might have problems. That sucks. I hope that they have friends that will listen to them instead. And
For once, we know Mark Zuckerberg is indeed having a bad day.
well, his whole squad has been asking for it. I mean, I don't think any of the people that work at Facebook actually use Facebook, because if they did, they'd see that it's like just terrible. It's the worst forum. It's like a horrible hobby forum. It's really only good for making people mad, it seems. Or you have to look at completely benign imagery. It's either benign imagery or incendiary crap. The weirdest part is like their attempt to market everything. I'm still kind of mad about the getting everything marketed to me on Facebook. Like, I don't want any of this stuff. I'm here to engage with people that I know, not look at advertisements for something that I have that's not even in this state. I started getting recommendations for and you know, okay, so the product wasn't actually that bad. It was like a cabinet making education class, online education class. You know, watch these 10 videos, look at this material, now you know how to make cabinets. And it was all in Spanish. And I thought, well, that's kind of cool. I'm getting some international ads. And then I looked at the comments, and it was just people complaining, like, why aren't you using English? This is an American website. And I'm starting to wonder, it's like, well, is an international communication platform beholden to one community?
There's no official language of this country.
Yeah, well, that too.
That's the funniest part of those people. Is like, oh, they act like, oh, speak English, motherfucker. Where? Show me where. Show me the rule where that says English is the official country language of this country. Oh wait, you can't. You fucking can't, because it's not. We don't have an official language. We don't have a fucking official language here. And it's crazy that people just don't understand that about the country that they live in. Some countries have official languages.
Yeah.
We don't. America, we do not. English is not our official language, in fact. That's why there's American English. We can call it English, and there's British English. And it's like...
They call that proper English.
Right, yeah, you know, it's like even down to actual... If you speak nondescript American English, that's closer to actual High British English, which is where you see Robert Downey Jr. in his Sherlock. It sounds like he's almost American, but the actual American accent, nondescript, is closest to the High British accent, not the Oxford accent. So there's like differences where what a lot of people hear is it ends up being, in their minds, the Oxford accent decides or defines British accent, but the High British is not the same as the Oxford. And then there's like the low class.
There's like the Suffolk and the Canterbury Cockney. And the Cockney and the
and then
the Liverpool and the whole,
like, it's only Cockney if when you were raised, you could hear the bells of a certain church ringing in your perimeter. Otherwise, your accent's not Cockney. And there's certain shit like that where it's like stupid, dumb shit. But again, what Americans mostly think of as like British is a lot of times low class English or Oxford. And it's crazy. Well, Americans have an identity crisis because we're just British light, and we like to think of ourselves as unique, but we're just basically the British that couldn't. And the British couldn't with us. So we became our own thing that end up having Britain in our pockets all the time anyway. But we got this little false sense of unique identity, and we got our little flag, and, you know, we got our own type of colonialism now. We don't need the crown to do colonialism anymore.
Yeah, we have a president, and we just call it imperialism. Oh, no, we call it just breaking freedom. That's right. It's freedom.
You get annexed, and you get annexed.
Oh man. Well, that's just like the whatchamacallit, the royalty that came to America and gave up their official roles within the monarchy, talking about how money's not that important to them. It's not that big of a deal. Like, good for them, you know. I'm glad that they can hang out with Oprah and talk about things that don't matter. I think that's one of the things that I've always wondered about the fetishization of English royalty. We fought a whole entire war
Right.
to give them the middle finger, and tell them to shove off, and then they came back in 1812 and almost kicked our asses, but then they didn't, and we still like there's still significant portions of the population that freak out anytime there's some event in England. I mean, don't get me wrong, man. If somebody was like, "Hey, I was invited to this gala at the palace. I got a guest. You want to come?" I'd be all about it. But it's not
Well,
like,
it's like, how do we not have people who are obsessed with the royal family end up on a list of possible treasonous people? Because it's like you said, we fought a whole war over that. If there's people obsessed with the royal family, I'm saying, hey, are you trying to get us back into the UK or some shit? Like, should we put you aren't those people more of a danger of making the United States uh, empire become beholden to the British Empire than like the way that they're portraying ISIS folks? Like, I feel like somebody in ISIS has way less possibility of making us part of like an Islamic empire than the people who try to subvert American identity by then making themselves or being obsessed with the royal family and like Britain, the fucking empire that we fought a war to distance ourselves from. Like, those people are treasonous,
I mean,
right?
the British unleashed 400 years of terror on the globe that only ended like 80 years ago. So
We should not be praising Queen Imperiala, and we should definitely be condemning her. It's the most American thing to do. We should find her fucking tea and dump it in a bay somewhere. It's what we should be doing as Americans. Want high tea? Go fucking swim for it then. Go get that shit out yourself.
we got some motif for you. It's right here.
Steep that shit in the bay. How about
How much? I wonder how much tea leaves. How many like metric tons of tea leaves it would take to change the color of? Oh, I guess Boston Harbor. I'm sure it's not brown. I'm sure it's not clear water. Got to find a clear body of water and turn it into a giant lake of tea. I'm sure that exists somewhere.
Yeah, because they turn the, what is it? What river is that in Chicago? No, Ohio.
I know yeah, the one they dye green. It's the Chicago River.
Oh, is it Chicago? Okay. I didn't think that straightforward. They not good at doing things. Chicago River. Yeah, Chicago, it's a river. Chicago River.
Well, that just makes sense, right?
I guess if you're a 5-year-old. Yeah, the river in Chicago. I'm gonna name it Chicago River. Easy. One name in the bank. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I have higher expectations of people, but
You know, it's funny. I'm looking at pictures of the Chicago River for St. Patrick's Day, and it's so green that it looks like antifreeze. I mean, it looks like fresh green antifreeze. The kind of stuff that people are like, keep it away from your pets, it'll kill them. I'm sure that they're just using some.
They use 100 pounds of oil-based fluorescent.
Ugh.
And it leaves it green for close to a week.
Ugh. What did it say?
They say it's completely harmless, which nothing is completely harmless.
Yeah.
If you drink water, that shit poisons you.
Yeah, nobody's actually drinking that water straight out of the river raw.
No, I'm saying, like, do you remember when that lady, I think it was a lady, died of drinking too much water from there was a couple of them from the trying to win like a PlayStation or some shit for kids.
Oh God. What, in Chicago?
No, this happened years ago. This was just regular water. I'm saying nothing is completely fucking there's nothing that's completely harmless. Like I said, you can drink too much water and die from it. Like, no, I'm not even talking about water from the Chicago. I'm talking about
holy shit. It was in 2007, a 28-year-old California woman. She was found dead in her home. She's mother of by her mom, and she was competing for the grand prize of a Wii, a Nintendo Wii.
And she was like practicing for it or some shit.
The contest was called "Hold Your Wii for a Wii."
Yep, killed her, and she wasn't the only one. I think there was somebody else that happened, and it was a dude, but it was for like a van or something maybe. Like,
it took 2 years for a jury to rule against the radio station for their water drinking contest.
oh, that's the only one.
That's the one. That's the only one I can find right now.
Yeah, because it was such a big one.
Yeah, it's definitely it's in charge of all of the results right now. And I died from water poisoning in a van, and it's still talking about the lady in Sacramento. So that sucks. Yeah. Georgia teen died from drinking too much water in 2014. Man, that's just fucked up.
Talk about the elderly woman or the elderly people in New York during heat waves who would drink too much water and it would dilute their blood and they would die.
Oh no, that's even weird. That's even crazier. But no, we were talking about in Sacramento there was a radio station that was carrying on a contest. Hold your Wii for a Wii, and a woman died from water poisoning. Also, probably like her bladder was probably enlarged because
that's that's Tycho Brahe.
Yeah.
Oh shit! So
Tycho Brahe themselves.
Oh.
Some kid got killed from a water chugging. Oh, he's 21, not a kid. But they made him drink so much water that he vomited, and it was like water chugging that killed him, basically.
Oh.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I mean. Like, when people like something is completely harmless, I'm like, I
mean, it looks like it's fluorescent marker dye.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember people chewing on that shit in high school or middle school and then having glowing teeth, but I don't know what happened to any of them. I don't know if they made it.
I remember people chewing on ballpoint pens until they exploded in their mouths.
Oh yeah. Ooh, I remember seeing a lot of blue mouths. They just ate a Smurf.
Smurf aside.
Smurf aside.
So there's this episode of Robot Chicken. It's one of my favorites. Where it's actually just a little segment where Gargamel finally gets some Smurfs to eat, and he's ready, and he cuts into it and puts it into his mouth and chews on it for a second, then spits it back out, and then next thing you know, he's ordering Chinese delivery. Yeah, all that time just to find out they taste terrible.
Our cartoons were pretty fucked up. Like
Looney Tunes,
bears,
Tom and Jerry.
Oh my god.
gummy bears, just straight up steroids, man.
Dude, gummy bears is so fucked up. They're taking pills that give them superpowers.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's just straight up steroids.
They're bouncing off the walls. Like,
Street Sharks.
Oh yeah, and how many? Like, what was it, Heathcliff or Ratfink? There's all these things that use like poverty as a plot point.
you know, it's what's interesting about Ratfink is that it was a counterculture to muscle car and hot rod culture back in like in the 50s. And I mean, it extended like well beyond the 50s. It went into the 60s and 70s and 80s even. And a lot of those cars are actually, I mean, they're incredible looking. They're buggies that look like they're not safe at all, or sometimes they've got these like dome or almost spherical glass windshields in the front. And
But yet again, you had to be like rich to make a street legal Ratfink car.
oh yeah, those things were not cheap. Holy shit.
So it's like, once again, rich people pretending to be poor and like appropriating the culture of poor people as a costume.
I mean,
like,
I remember in Boulder, I was visiting Boulder, and there would be like groups of teenagers dressed as if they were impoverished. And then like at the end of the day, they would like get picked up in like Mercedes, Lexus.
oh man, that's like what Chris was talking about, his experience in high school.
Yeah.
At what'd you say, Park Tudor?
yeah, it's funny because I was listing the same cars too. Down exact same list. Yeah, it's like they all think they're unique too with their fucking
They would panhandle.
yeah.
You know, that was actually a problem in Southeast Asia. Like, you know, leading up to pandemic, there were all these people who would just go on some tour of Southeast Asia, and at some point they ran out of money because it was more expensive than they had budgeted for, and so they're sitting there panhandling so they can get back to America. Actually, it's probably so they can get to their next hotel.
Yeah, I mean that's some shit you can do when you're American in your mind and just go somewhere and not like budget how much it's gonna cost because the embassy will eventually ship your ass back if you like fuck up.
I mean, I was unintentionally panhandling or what is it called, busking in China when I was learning how to play an instrument on the side of out of the door of a restaurant, but I didn't make much money. I think I had like the equivalent of like 5 yuan. So what is that? That's like 75 cents. 60 cents. That's different though. I wasn't trying to make money so I could eat. I was unconsciously, a little drunk and had a hat on the ground because it was too hot. In hindsight, I'm actually kind of like disappointed in myself. Though at the time it was amusing. It still kind of is amusing.
I did a little bit of unsuccessful busking in college as well. Friend of mine had a guitar and was playing, and then I would do like vocals or backup vocals, and then we ended up marching around Kirkwood singing and playing music.
Did you at least come up with enough money to buy beer?
We didn't come up with any money at all.
If there isn't a clear sign.
The sign was pretty clear. Yeah. It was the last time we did that.
I remember when I was a teenager and I would go downtown and hang out at People's Park. I knew some people who would spange, for spare change. And they were really pretty good at it. I think, they generally would come up with enough money to buy like a handle of the cheapest vodka imaginable. But I remember one time they actually had a really good day, like a couple $100. And they ended up securing enough booze so that, the whole park crew could go get tanked at someone's house. But they were just asking for spare change. That's panhandling. And now, when people are down at on Kirkwood at People's Park and that kind of stuff happens, the police show up and shoo them off. And they got run off from the library. Now they hang out at a Seminary Square, where at one point during, peak cold, the city decided to destroy all of their belongings.
Seriously?
Yeah, Bloomington did some fucked up shit this past winter. During pandemic, of course. It's like the first really like good opportunity to be to be human and to be good people, and they just kind of screwed it. They didn't deploy like enough shelters quickly enough. They didn't allocate enough resources to develop the kind of sheltering or just support networks that they would need for an economic collapse.
In Bloomington downtown, for like, is there outdoor dining, and do they have like bubbles for people to sit in, or like
they've got
enclosed patios?
No, they've moved seating out into the parking areas along the sidewalks. And
I've seen bubbles.
Oh, I haven't seen any bubbles.
Yeah, they have bubbles in front of like Uptown, and what's it called, Malibu Grill. Like on the square, they have bubbles at pretty much every restaurant outside.
That makes sense. That's a high volume of traffic.
It's so easy to put bubbles outside for people to sit and eat in, but you can't put bubbles outside for people to sleep.
Exactly.
Shelter.
Yeah, fuck that shit, man. That shit pisses me off so bad.
Hey, they'll spend $200 and something thousand on a Bearcat that they never use, except to intimidate people. That's a lot of tents. That's an entire facility that they could have set up to house people who are in need.
I mean, yeah, they could just buy a fucking apartment building at this point, where again, it's like they have the money's there, they're just not solving these problems.
Yeah.
Leaving these people out to dry. And that's where I'm like, I'm looking at all the poor people that are like around. There's like a few that everybody knows because they're always in the same spots, and I'm like, there's no way that person got a fucking stimulus check.
If they did, they didn't receive it, and they don't know how to get the funds out.
They might have been assigned it, but there's no way they got it.
Yeah.
No fucking way they got that stimulus check. The person that needs it the most, there's no way for them to get it. So I'm looking at that shit like, man, they're doing this shit on purpose.
Yeah.
There's a way that person could get their stimulus money if they had set it up. But nope, that dude's still out on the corner.
Well, they don't have an address.
That's what I'm saying. Like, but even without an address, if you're an American citizen, you should be able to go somewhere and like get your fucking stimulus in the form of a debit
card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I read something online. I don't know if it was a meme or if it was an excerpt from like a social services website that talked about like going to a place where tax returns are processed and then filling out a particular form if you're homeless, and then you would get your stimulus check in the form of a debit card.
I mean, that's really nice, but in Bloomington, the tax office is like in an industrial park on the other side of the interstate from where the homeless camps are. And I've never tried to hoof it across the overpasses to get to the west side. I wouldn't want to do it though, because there aren't actually. It's not the kind of. There's no like. Walk now signs. There aren't any sidewalks for that. It's dangerous. It's fucking dangerous. People fly up the off ramp going full speed, and they only stop at the last minute because apparently that's the culture of driving we have now. And yeah, there have been times where like when I come to a stop at an intersection, it's like, holy shit, there's a person standing right there. Because everyone wears dark colors and you can't see anything.
Yeah, the culture of wearing dark colors.
I remember when I was a kid, there was this like emphasis on having like reflective strips on jackets. because kids were getting hit by bikes, and then there was this big push for helmets, and helmets had reflective strips and mouth guards and extra eyewear protection. And
I wear a high-vis hat just for my daily goings around. Say,
I remember
it's a stocking cap, and it's like it looks like a traffic cone.
Shit. I remember they did a demonstration of what a watermelon would be like if you dropped it without a helmet and then with a helmet.
Yeah.
Thinking as a kid, I'm like, that's not like getting hit by a car though, right? I'm like, if you get hit by a car, you're fucked in my little kid head. And I'm just like, man, the idea that a bike helmet is going to save you from death if you get hit by a car, like I was not buying it.
well, I think the real benefit to those early helmet technology wasn't so much that people would survive. It was that their head would be contained and easier to, pick up. I think that's the point of like the helmets that they issued during World War I and II. It wasn't to protect them from stray bullet or shrapnel or debris. It was that when that giant concussive force hit them from the mortar that landed 20 feet away from them, turned their brain into jelly, that their head didn't explode and it was easier to pick up pieces. And I think now there's like really advanced technology being put into the design of like motorcycle helmets. But yeah, I think if you're standing still and some vehicle hits you going 40 plus miles an hour, you're pretty fucked. I mean, 5,000 pounds or 6,000 pounds of truck at 40 miles an hour is an incredible force.
Yeah. That's what I was like, man.
I've seen those videos where a truck plows into a stationary vehicle at an intersection and, there are no survivors, which is crazy. Sometimes there are survivors, but I imagine they wish they hadn't. Because, I was talking to my dad about this at one point, how when he was younger, there were all these, like, driving safety videos that they made people watch, and they would show like the insides of vehicles after accidents, and they'd be covered in blood. Like what was once a bright white and chrome Bel Air dashboard is now crimson red, and can never be operated again because someone died in it. And people got tore up inside those things because they had metal dashboards and glass that just turned into razor blades essentially. We've got safer vehicles now, like incredibly safe vehicles now. If you've got a modern car made within the last like 6 years it adheres to all of the the new standards, then yeah, it's a much safer vehicle than it was 10 years ago. But even then, when we've got gigantic trucks, like obscenely large trucks flying around at speeds that will definitely kill somebody, and it just seems so absurd to me that people just drive even faster. Like the culture of NASCAR is just out of control.
Yeah, I think it's so weird that we have cars and semis on the same roads. Like that shit always weirds me out. Like those are not. It's as if two species of vehicle were meant to or put on the same road, and it's like the damage that a semi can do to a small car and the damage in contrast to what a small car can't do to a semi without like a rocket launcher attachment or some shit. It's not like, I'm not saying, oh, it's not fair. It's like, no, those things shouldn't be on the same road together because the damage is so disproportionate to the smaller vehicles when there's going to be so many more of those. Like if one semi skids and can't stop, it can wipe out like 10 cars. One car skids and slams to the back of the semi, that car gets wiped out. Still, like the only way a semi is getting wiped out is if it jackknifes or gets hit by another semi. And it's sorry, go ahead. I can't hear you.
I think that's like the problem is that we've got this like culture that wants to solve things with force or with power. You know, gotta have a bigger truck, gotta have a bigger, but more badass vehicle. But there's no, there's nowhere for those vehicles to go at a certain point. We're quickly approaching this world where they're trying to push electric cars on us, and we don't even know if the batteries are going to last 10 years or if there's even going to be a real used car market. So what happens to everyone when there's no more gasoline cars and we've got nothing but electric cars that cost almost the same amount to replace the battery as it is to buy a new one, and still have to go really fast the entire time? So if those motors will burn out, we're just like exhausting resources at a growing rate. Every year there's more drivers on the road, so we need more cars. My truck turned 26 this year in February, and I decided instead of trying to sell it, I'm gonna hold on and see if I can get it to 30 years. Because at 30 years, that's a decade. Oh fuck, no, that's like I don't even know how many miles are on it at this point, but apparently you have to keep a vehicle for 200,000 miles to extract the initial investment in the vehicle. And it doesn't matter about maintenance because you got to maintain the vehicle anyways. But I think at 30 years, I should have been able to extract like way more value out of that vehicle than I the initial investment. And especially since the original owner absorbed all of the depreciation. Also, I think it'd be really cool to have a 30-year-old truck. And at this point, I've come to terms with the fact that it's a gas guzzler and it gets, the same kind of fuel economy that trucks have been getting for the last 100 years practically, and that I really only use it for a few things. And some people might hate it, and it's kind of hard for me to be like, yeah, environmental issues and concerns and stuff, but I drive a gas hog. But I don't think that somebody who's only driving an electric vehicle, 40 miles a day is actually going to extract the actual value of even the materials that go into it, like all of the lithium or the magnet structures for those motors. I think those things will wear out from whatever they're going to wear out, because batteries just don't last. We've all had electronics that have batteries that just refuse to hold a charge after a couple of years, and I don't see this having changed in any battery technology. There's still it's already happening with the early generation of Teslas. So man, it's just like the future is pretty bleak. That's all. And I think about that quite a bit because we've got all the choices in the world right now for vehicles, but for whatever reason, they're so damn expensive. Like when I was in high school, you could like a new car or a truck was not $40,000. Like trucks are 40 to 100 grand these days.
I mean, but you also got paid way less.
That's true. Well, some people got paid.
No, it's a scale.
Yeah.
No, those people got paid more. They were buying a fucking Mercedes for 40 grand.
Yeah, it's true.
Weren't buying a pickup truck.
Yeah, but now
the Mercedes and not pickup trucks.
Yeah, I don't think
it depends on where they lived.
I wonder how many Mercedes people are going out and buying a big old or a truck. I think that's like a completely different demographic.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah. They're buying the Mercedes Jeep.
Yeah, the G-Wagon.
Yeah.
That thing is actually an incredible off-road vehicle, and every time I see an off-road YouTube video of that thing, it's like one of the most impressive off-road trucks that exists. And it should be, because it has all that Mercedes technology in it. But it's impressive. I gotta admit. Stupid expensive though.
So much is stupid expensive.
Yeah, I think that's. I mean, good old Elon is super wealthy now. Of course, that a lot of that has to do with like the fluctuation of Bitcoin, as I understand. But he was still on the path to making billions and billions of dollars, and so.
I mean, I don't think he's even made that much since he got in, honestly.
Oh, really? Oh, that's
Yeah,
just his estimated net worth then.
I mean, I don't think he's liquid.
Yeah.
Like all that shit is bullshit because it's not liquid. It's just a headline wealth. It's not actual wealth. Like if you compared his wealth to like the Saudi royals or some shit, it's not liquid at all.
Yeah.
Where theirs is liquid in assets.
Well, theirs is liquid in assets, and it's also liquid in oil.
Right. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Truly, literally liquid.
So, according to Sprout.com, the average billionaire only holds 1% of their net worth in liquid assets. Yep. So, if he's got 158 billion, he's really only good for 1.58 billion in liquid assets, and that's still a fucking large ass sum of money.
Not compared to his expenses, though. That's the problem.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know what his expenses look like.
They're high because I'm saying in the sense of he's using his liquidity or his wealth representation to then do things like take out loans for SpaceX or Tesla or some shit as a business where his
for every
wealth is then inflated with the assets of the company.
For every article that tries to talk about how wealthy he is, for every three, there's one that talks about how he's actually cash poor.
Yep. And the one that's talk about wealthy never talk about his cash flow or liquidity because they're trying to portray one thing to people who don't understand liquidity or cash flow
or money in general
Yeah. It's those people. In America is very much dependent upon American people not understanding how their own currency works.
In 2018, his base salary was $56,000 for Tesla.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out what's going to happen when the U.S. dollar is no longer liquid to Bitcoin, because that's going to happen at some point.
Yeah.
Like if one Bitcoin equals, say, $1 million USD, then the USD won't actually be liquid to Bitcoin. So I'm interested to see what happens because it's already happened with Canada, I believe.
Yeah.
So like Canada as a country is no longer liquid to the Bitcoin market capitalization, that's some mind-blowing shit. And it's like going to take some time for people to reframe their thought. And this gets down to the same shit where I'm like, there's more people that use cryptocurrencies now than people that live in Ireland. That's why there's more energy used. It's just math. That's what's going to happen. If there were half as many people using crypto as living in Ireland, it would be like half the electric usage. But yeah, Americans are not good at math perpetually.
I may have mentioned this before, that there's a YouTube channel called Mind Your Decisions with Paresh Talwalkar, and he's this mathematician who likes to explain math in a fun way, and I highly recommend it. If anyone's bored and wants to explore some mathematics, you will definitely learn something and you'll be entertained.